I guess I was scared of becoming Jack Black. Look, I love record stores. Specs in Sebring, my first exposure to buying an album, usually on cassette with my own money, bringing it home and fetishizing about everything about it. Vinyl Fever in Tallahassee, where my friends worked, and I got my first taste of getting my hands on something I knew to be hard to find. And since living in Atlanta, there's been Criminal Records, the part record shop, part indie comic shop where I first heard the music of Charlie Hunter. Wuxtree Records, the bastion of all things hip and vinyl. Ella Guru, where they take jazz and avant-garde as seriously as I do. And of course, the dear departed Tower Records. I used to spend hours at a time in Tower Records. Seriously. It's a thing my ex and I used to do as a date night. Just browse through Tower Records for a couple of hours at a time. It was fantastic. As much affection as I have for these places, though, there's no denying the truth behind the archetype represented by Jack Black's character in High Fidelity. Anyone who has spent enough time in a record store knows it. Though honestly, it seems like the more record stores close up, the more those same guys end up running sound and clubs. The thing is, I already have a large amount of sensitivity about coming across as an elitist know-it-all. Let's face it, I have a degree in physics, I subscribe to math and history channels on YouTube, I work in IT, I listen to prog, fusion, and NPR. I've even had coworkers refer to me as Cliff Clavin. If I went full-on, obscure, alt-rock record store guy, I think even my daughter would cringe when talking to me. I bring all this up because, rightly or wrongly, I have always associated one band in particular as the gateway to that particular record store guy know-it-all mindset. And that band is the Pixies. Dang it. I suppose I should explain that buzzer. I know that the band's name is just Pixies. There's no "the" in front, but for the life of me, I can't seem to drill that into my head. It just feels so unnatural to leave it out. So I wrote a small little program that will keep track of how many times I incorrectly place the definite article in front of the band name. Right, so back to the story. I've had this mental block concerning the Pixies, dang it, for a while now. In fact, just this week I had a friend remind me that I once made a comment along the lines of, if they hate music so much, why do they keep making it? So keep in mind as I go through this that I've got this image in my mind, and it might be hard to separate that image from the music itself. It's kind of like golf. Look, I've never played a round of golf. I'm sure golf is a lovely game. My in-laws are both avid golfers, and they're lovely people, and I genuinely enjoy their company. But, okay, in every office I've ever worked in, there's been at least one golf guy. The guy who has a putter in his office, decorative tees on the wall. The guy who suggests Top Golf for every outing. The guy that works on his swing while you're talking to him. Just once, I'm going to get brave enough to bring some other kind of sports equipment into the office and see if it flies. Someone comes into my office, I'll talk to them while I'm fencing, or maybe on skis. The point is, I've known enough of these golf guys that it covers the entire concept of golf for me now. As a result of 25 years of these guys, I now associate golf with Glengarry Glen Ross, with being referred to as champ or pal or sport, with boats, pets, and even computers named after Jimmy Buffett songs. And that's wrong of me. It's completely unfair, and I acknowledge that. I need to break the stereotype in my head. I also need to get over the idea of the Jack Black character from High Fidelity every time I think of the Pixies. Dang it! And the best way I know to do that, I think, is to get to know their music a lot better. All right, Pixies, let's get into Doolittle. First thing I'm noticing about the music. Apparently the Pixies, dang it, were one of the first alternative bands to do the whole abrupt dynamics thing. Start real quiet, go loud for a few bars, go back to quiet again with no transition. They sure use a lot on this album. Black Francis is shouting. That's a thing all by itself, isn't it? There are a couple of songs like Tame where he sounds downright inhuman. But it's definitely not an all the time kind of a thing. There are even times when his harmonies with Kim Deal actually sound as if they're working towards the same thing. Kind of minimalism seems to be a thing here as well, but not the minimalism in the usual way that I think of it. There's a sentiment that's often attributed to Blaise Pascal that, to paraphrase, goes something like, I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. That's usually what I think of when I think of minimalism. Having a fully fleshed idea and then stripping away anything unnecessary until you're left with just the purest essence of what you intended to say. It seems to be that the Pixies, dang it, come at it from the other direction. What that is, they start with the idea of what's the barest minimum that we have to compose for it still to be considered a song. A couple of these songs, like There Goes My Gun, are only like 3 or 4 repeated lines. I also get the distinct impression that the Pixies, dang it, use the ambiguity caused by this kind of minimalism to their advantage. It allows their fans to superimpose meaning and narrative where none actually exists. I can't make up my mind whether that's cynical or genius. Maybe both. A few other musical observations. I noticed that even though the bass and drums rely pretty heavily on a steady 16th pulse, the forms aren't always even. They use a bunch of 2 and 3 bar phrases to create uneven, asymmetrical sounding verses, like in Tame, Wave of Mutilation, and Here Comes Your Man. The guitar parts occasionally caught my ear as well. Not just the single note melodies that they use a lot, but some of the dissonant chords. Towards the end of Tame, the backing guitar is kind of buried in the mix, but the dissonance it creates still comes out. And when you listen closer, the attack is so bright it almost sounds like a harpsichord. Maybe it has something to do with the picks he's using. The picks he's using. Thank you. I still haven't completely shaken the vibe of the fact that I like this music and you don't makes me better than you. But I'm determined to do all I can to get past it. Let's give this a full week to work its way into my subconscious. And while I still can, let me apologize to you if I seem like a record store version of comic book guy next time you see me. Worst segue ever. First, I reject the premise of Debaser. As I understand it, the premise of the song is that the short film Un Chien Andalou was made specifically to subject the viewers to images which would debase them. And the Pixies, dang it, want their music to serve that same purpose. I say that Un Chien Andalou's surrealist imagery was not intended to debase, but rather to address the audience through emotional content of the images rather than through a traditional plot-based narrative structure. In fact, even the word debase lends credence to a premise that some concepts are inherently more elevated and others more base, and I reject that. Second, I would say that the lyrics to Tame have not aged well at all. A song, by Black Francis's own admission, about how mediocre he finds the college girls around him. It's a song version of the very worst parts of Good Will Hunting. How do you like them apples? Most important to me, though, is the flippancy. I'm not going to say there's nothing here. There clearly is. The Pixies, dang it, create some memorable musical moments on this album. The single note guitar and vocal line in the song Dead is brilliant in an almost Mark Rothko kind of a way. Silver, that creates a very Quentin Tarantino meets Sergio Leone kind of a mood, and it does so with very few elements. But there's so often a disconnect. How can I explain it? Well, the best way I know to explain it is it's like the difference between country and jazz. If you were to chart the history of country music, you would hear that something happened to popular country music somewhere in the 70s. The music stopped serving the song and started serving the genre. So take my country ballad version of Here Comes Your Man, the opening music for this video. If you heard the first few bars of that come on the radio, would you be able to tell what the emotional content of the song would be? I mean, judging just from the music, could you tell for sure if it was going to be a song about heartbreak, maybe? Or maybe a dad's ballad to his daughter? Maybe a patriotic ode to the hometown? Maybe a drinking song? It could be any of these or a dozen more. The music component doesn't give you that information. The only information you get from the musical aspect of modern country is, here's a country song. But if you put on the first two bars of any tune from Lee Morgan, McCoy Tyner, or even the first two notes from a B.B. King tune, you know exactly what the emotional content of the song is. The music serves the song. Well, that disconnect between what the music does and what the emotional content of the song is trying to convey, that's what I hear from the Pixies. Dang it! And so, despite my best efforts, I still say it's a reasonable assumption to see this disconnect as a stylistic choice. A choice intended to foster a feeling of superiority in those who have made the effort to wade through the musical barrage to pull out a deeper meaning. Or it could just be that I don't connect emotionally with the music in the same way that other people do. And finally, let me make one thing clear. I'm speaking specifically about what my mind would do should I become a fan of this music. If you dig Doolittle, if this is your jam, go for it. I am not passing judgment on you or making any kind of assumptions about who you are as a person. But look, either way, at least for now, I am moving on from Pixies.